All right, so this is the key to the functions worksheet 6. And on this worksheet, you're given three functions, f of x, which is this quadratic function, and then g of x and h of x, which are linear functions. And then you're asked to find these functional values here. All right, so if you look at number 1, you want to find g plus h evaluated at 3. So that's how you read this. G plus h at 3, evaluated at 3. Now by definition, so you have to know your definition when you're adding two functions together. So by definition, this means g of 3 plus h of 3. That's what that means. And so what you need to do at this point is you need to find out, well, what is g of 3? And then you need to find out what is h of 3 and then add those up. So let's go off to the side and figure that out. So let's talk about g of 3. So to find g of 3, notice I'm using the notation here. The function name is g. So I've got to use the function g of x. So this one right here, this linear function, represents g of x. So g of x is 7x plus 2. So then at that point, which you've had numerous experiences with how to deal with this, so to find g of 3, remember that means what's the y value when x is 3. So to find g of 3, you go to your function g of x, and wherever you see the variable x, you substitute 3. So in place of this x, you're going to substitute 3. So we're going to get, this is going to equal 7 times 3 plus 2. And then using the order of operations, we're going to multiply before we add. So we get 21 plus 2, which is 23. So g of 3 is 23. Now let's find h of 3. So let's talk about what h of 3 is. So we're going to do the same thing. So we're going to go to my function h of x, which is this one here. And wherever we see the variable x, we're going to substitute 3. So this becomes 3 times 3 minus 1. So that's 9 minus 1, which is 8. So h of 3 then becomes 8. And so therefore, g plus h at 3, evaluated at 3, is going to equal 23 plus 8, which is 31. All right, so that's it. So that is your answer. So you're going to say in this blank right here, g plus h evaluated at 3 is 31. Okay, so let's look at number 2. So number 2, we have f minus g at 2. So f minus g at 2, or f minus g evaluated at 2. In the lessons, we talked about the fact that don't think of this as multiplication. That's not what that is. That does not mean g plus h times 3. That's not what that means. Okay? So be careful. This means g plus h evaluated at 3, f minus g evaluated at 2. So by definition, then, this right here becomes f of 2 minus g of 2. And then just like we did the previous one, we're going to go to the side here. We're going to find out what f of 2 is. We're going to find out what g of 2 is, and then we're going to subtract those. So let's talk about f of 2. So f of 2, remember, just like you did these, you're going to go to your function f, which is this quadratic function here, and where we see the variable x, you're going to substitute 2. So this becomes 2 times 2 squared minus 6 times 2 plus 2. So wherever I saw the variable x, I substituted 2. Now using the order of operations, we're going to you do exponents before we multiply. So don't say 2 times 2 is 4 and then 4 squared. You have to do the exponents first. So 2 times 2 is 4, and so this becomes 2 times 4, and then this is 12. 6 times 2 is 12, and then plus 2. So this becomes 8 minus 12 plus 2, and then 8 minus 12 is a negative 4. Negative 4 plus 2 is a negative 2. So f of 2 is a negative 2. And then I'm going to subtract from negative 2 whatever g of 2 is. So let's talk about g of 2. So g of 2, you're going to go to your function g, which is 7x plus 2. And where we see the variable x, you'll substitute 2. So this becomes 7 times 2 plus 2. So that's 14 plus 2, which is 16. And so negative 2 subtract 16, which means the same thing as saying negative 2 plus a negative 16 is going to equal a negative 18. So f subtract 2, f subtract g rather, evaluated at 2 is a negative 18. Now again, notice that you have to show the work. Don't just put the answer down. Always follow directions. Show complete work. And there's your work right here. All right, number 3, you want to find, so this is a notation given. All right, so let me go ahead and write that out first. So notice this closed dot right here means multiplication. It was open, which you'll see in another worksheet. It was open, that would mean composition. So those definitions are different. Those concepts are different. So this here means f times h evaluated at 1. So by definition, that means f of 1 times h of 1. And so we're going to find f of 1, then we're going to find h of 1, and then we're going to multiply those together. All right, so let's find f of 1. So to find f of 1, and I'm going to go ahead and rewrite those functions here that I need. So f of x is 2x squared minus 6x plus 2. And then h of x is 3x minus 1. All right, so to find f of 1, you go to your function f. Where we see the variable x, you substitute 1. So this becomes 2 times 1 squared minus 6 times 1 plus 2. And then 1 squared is 1, so this becomes 2 times 1. 6 times 1 is 6, so subtract 6 and then plus 2. So that's 2 subtract 6 plus 2. 2 subtract 6 is a negative 4. Negative 4 plus 2 is a negative 2. So f of 1 is a negative 2. Then we're going to multiply that by h of 1. So let's find out what h of 1 is. So h of 1, so in your variable x, you can substitute 1. So we get 3 times 1 minus 1. 3 times 1 is 3. 3 minus 1 is 2. So h of 1 is 2. And so therefore negative 2 times a positive 2 is a negative 4. And so for number 3, your answer is going to be negative 4. All right, number 4, you want to find h subtract f at negative 3. All right, so by definition, this means h of 3, negative 3 rather, minus f of negative 3. All right, so h of negative 3 minus f of negative 3. So we have to find h of negative 3, then we have to find f of negative 3, and then we're going to subtract them. So let's go off to the side and figure out what h of negative 3 is. So here's my function h of x, my function h, and where we see the variable x, I'm going to substitute negative 3. So this becomes 3 times negative 3 minus 1, and then 3 times negative 3 is a negative 9, and negative 9 subtract 1 is going to be a negative 10. So that's a negative 10 right here. And then f of negative 3, and let me go ahead and do that here. F of negative 3. So I'm going to go to my function f, and where we see the variable x, I'm going to substitute negative 3. So this becomes 2 times negative 3 squared minus 6 times negative 3 plus 2. Remember, order of operations, so you have to do exponents before you multiply. Negative 3 squared means negative 3 times itself, so that's 9. So it becomes 2 times 9. A negative 6 times a negative 3 is a positive 18, and then plus 2. So 2 times 18 is 18, so I get 18 plus 2. 18 plus 18 is 36, and then 36 plus 2 is going to equal 38. So that's 38 right here. So f of negative 3 is 38. Just let me double check before I go on to the next one. So that's negative 3, wherever we saw the variable x, you substitute negative 3. So that's 9 times 2 is 18. Okay, that's right. And so a negative 10 subtract 38 is the same thing as saying negative 10 plus a negative 38, which is a negative 48. So number 4, this should be a negative 48. All right, and then finally number 5, we have this. We have g divided by h evaluated at negative 2. All right, so by definition, This means g of negative 2 divided by h of negative 2. So I need to find what g of negative 2 is, then I need to find what h of negative 2 is. So let's go ahead and find out what g of negative 2 is. So let me write down the function g of x. So g of x is equal to 7x plus 2. All right, so where we see the variable x, I'm going to substitute negative 2. So this becomes 7 times negative 2 plus 2. 7 times a negative 2 is a negative 14. Negative 14 plus 2 is a negative 12. So that's the numerator. So this equals negative 12 divided by, then we find h of negative 2. All right, so h of negative 2, here is my function h, so that's 3x minus 1. So h of negative 2 is 3 times negative 2 minus 1. Yep. And so that's negative 6 minus 1, which is negative 6 plus a negative 1, which is negative 7. And then reduce if you can. We all know that a negative divided by negative is a positive, so you need to write it like that. And 12 and 7, the greatest common factor is 1, so then we can just leave it as positive 12 sevenths. Or if you want to write it as a mixed number, you can. So remember how to write that as a mixed number. Let me go ahead and do that on here. So we'd say 7 to 12, right? So 7 goes into 12 one time. 1 times 7 is 7. Subtract 7 from 12, we get 5. So it'll be 1 and 5 sevenths. So positive 1 and 5 sevenths. Oops. Okay? All right, I'm going to leave it as the improper fraction 12 sevenths. So that's 12 sevenths. Not negative 12 over negative 7. You need to know that a negative divided by negative is a positive and use that fact. All right, so that's it. So that is the key to this worksheet on the algebra of functions.